Welcome to today's Tanya class. It's an exciting day. We're beginning the actual text of the Tanya, starting from Perek Aleph, the first page, Tanya. So before we go anywhere, what is this attempting to do on this in the beginning here? We're going to see that it's a discussion of who you are. You're going to go on a spiritual journey to try and, as the author told us, arouse yourself to love and fear, how to show that it's very close to you, this thing, that you can be connected to Hashem. Before you start anything, you have to sort of check out the scenario that you're already found in. Which means anyone who's trying to honestly do real work on themselves, they have to assess their situation. What are your strengths and what are your weaknesses and where are you found? What level are you on before you begin? And you can't fool yourself. You have to know your true state of affairs. So it's a little bit difficult to swallow when you actually realize where you're truly holding. But on the other hand, it can be encouraging depending on realizing what's actually being asked of you. So let's get to the point. The Tanya begins with the famous statement, Mashbi mosoti tzadik val rasha. We make an oath upon being born. In other words, before you're born, your soul, when it's still above, before it comes to your body, is told to make an oath, demanded that you will be a tzaddik, a righteous person, and not be a rasha, a wicked person. This is something everybody does upon agreeing to come down here into this physical world. So then basically you're striving to be good and not bad. It's a simple concept. The only thing is, it gets interesting, because that statement continues, that it says even if the whole world will tell you that you're a tzaddik, in other words, that you're accomplishing what you came here to do, no, you have to be in your eyes like a wicked person, like a rasha. So it's a very big contradictory. On one hand, you swear when you come down here you're going to be righteous and not wicked, and then if anyone asks you, you have to say, no, I'm not righteous, I'm like a wicked person. So that's already a little bit of a requiring explanation. And secondly, he goes on to say that saying that you're a wicked person, is already seems to go against another principle that says you should not be wicked in your own estimation. In other words, you bump into by accomplishing one suggestion of the sages that you should be in your eyes like a wicked person, you're contradicting another suggestion of the sages that you should not be a wicked person in your own estimation. So there's a problem here. And why should you not be like a wicked person in your own estimation? For two reasons. One, he says basically you'll become depressed. If you think you're bad, you'll be sad. And then there's a principle, Ivdu as Hashem b'simcha, you must serve Hashem in joy. There's definitely no chachma, no wisdom in going on a path that's going to make you depressed and bring yourself down. So if you're constantly saying to yourself you're wicked, which we just said the suggestion is should be wicked in your own eyes, then that's going to seemingly lead to depression. That's not good. And what else could come from it on the other side if you think you're wicked? If you think you're wicked, you could get complacent with the status of being wicked. You can say, I'm wicked, pass the chips, no problem. What are we really striving for anyway? Let's just have as much fun as we can in this world and be wicked. That's also not a good situation. So in other words, what does the Tanya mean? It says you should be like a wicked person in your estimation. It's clearly not what it appears. So in order to explain this, the Alter Rebbe brings out the classic 5 different types of status that a human being can be. And he says that there's a range from perfectly righteous to perfectly wicked, and in the middle there's something called the Beinoni, the middleman. So there's 5 because it goes righteous to the full, what's called tzaddik gomer, a perfectly righteous person, and then a little bit less than that, tzaddik she'eino gomer, a tzaddik who is not complete, an incomplete tzaddik. One step down, you're called a middleman, a Beinoni. One step further, you're already on the side of rasha, but you're not a perfect rasha, as it were. You're not a total wicked person. You're a wicked person with some good. And then finally, total wicked. So there's a spectrum. Who are you? Where do you stand? So the idea, what does it mean that it says, I'm giving away a little bit of the secrets of the coming chapters, but we're not here to keep ourselves in suspense. We're here to understand the Tanya. So when it says that you should be like a wicked person in your own estimation, later on we're going to see that that's a very exact language. It doesn't say you should be a wicked person in your estimation. It says here you should be like a wicked person in your estimation. Okay, so what does it mean? So it means that there's something called wicked, there's something called a little bit wicked, and there's something called a Beinoni, a middleman. And such a person who is called a middleman, that's what it means that you should be like a wicked person in your own estimation. In other words, not that you should be actually wicked, you should be someone who's like a wicked person, which means you're not a perfectly righteous person, so therefore you're in the middle. And therefore, someone who goes along and someone calls you a tzaddik, you're told, and you're told you should be in your eyes like a rasha, how does that jive with the original oath that you took to be a tzaddik and not to be a rasha? It kind of goes well. Because you're saying that, okay, I swore to be a tzaddik, but if someone comes and asks me if I'm a tzaddik, I shouldn't be in my own estimation a wicked person, but I can be like a wicked person, i.e. I can tell them that I'm a Beinoni, a middleman, in order to, keep a certain semblance of humility. I'm not telling them I've succeeded in becoming a righteous person, but I'm certainly not in my own estimation like a wicked person. I'm only like a wicked person, which is again this middleman. So we find a person who came into the world called Rabbah, and he was the great tzaddik and sage of his generation, and he, so to speak, fulfilled this instruction perfectly. He explained that there's 5 levels of man: tzaddik, a little bit less tzaddik, wicked, a little bit less wicked, and the middleman. And he said, like me, I'm a wicked man. So his student Abaye, the great and awesome student Abaye, said, wait, you're a middleman? That's a problem. Because if you're just merely a middleman, and you're greater than every single other person in the world, he was the great Rebbe of the whole Jewish people, that puts everybody else in the category of being a rasha, being a wicked person. And that's not attainable, it's impossible. So we have to understand what's going on here. So he said that he was ultimately fulfilling this directive. If someone comes and tells you you're a tzaddik, you should be in your own estimation like a wicked man. He wasn't able to come along and say that he was a tzaddik, because that would be going against the advice of the sages that we just mentioned. At the same time, he didn't consider himself a wicked man. He was like a wicked man, that he placed himself in this realm of Beinoni, which is this middle man. So break for a second, that itself comes with certain issues and problems. The fact that Rabbah was fulfilling the directive of the sages to not call himself a tzaddik, but the fact that he called himself a Beinoni itself raises some eyebrows. How could he be a middleman? This changes our definition of what this middleman, this intermediary man is. And why is that? Because everybody, including himself, Rabbah, knew that he was not a person who had half sins and half merits. In other words, that can't be what a middleman is, because regarding this Rabbah, it says that he was so holy and Torah was constantly streaming from his mouth at every second of his existence, that even the angel of death who tried to come and get him couldn't grab him. He couldn't find a holding on him, because he was so perfectly righteous at every moment of his existence that there was no room for the angel of death to get his hands on him. So he was definitely not your normal type of intermediary man. It seems that he did not have even the slightest measure of sin in him, because we know that anyone who does have a slight measure of sin is already called a wicked person. He's already called a rasha. The Rebbe here brings several different places in the Gemara where it says that a person who merely has the inequity of not rebuking their friend and stopping someone from doing a sin even though he didn't do anything wrong, that person's already called a rasha. And we know that a person who could be occupied in a good deed and he's just sitting there sort of doing nothing, that person, the Rebbe says, is already called a rasha. How much more so if you actually do something wrong? They're all already called wicked. So the fact that Rabbah saw himself as an intermediary man certainly means that the intermediary man already doesn't do anything in the realm of wicked, because Rabbah could never have made a mistake that he was a half and half kind of a guy. So it's a bit of a mouthful, that's the truth. There's a lot of information here that we're going to unpack. But on a sort of note, what can we take home from this? The first page of Tanya, we've got a long journey ahead of us, but let's discuss one little point that we said yesterday, and we'll carry this point through in all of our lessons. That is that the day of the Tanya that we're reading today is not happenstance. Each day that it was designated to be read on each particular day is also an act of tremendous divine intervention and what we call hashgacha pratis, divine providence. And so what's special about today's Tanya? It happens to be, and not every year, but in a year like this, which is called a leap year, it happens to be that the first page of Tanya falls out on the 24th of Kislev, which is a very, very special day in the Jewish calendar. It's the day before Hanukkah, but more importantly, that day before Hanukkah was the day that the whole Hanukkah was really based on, because it was the day the Jewish people overcame the mighty Greek army, and the few and the weak were able to destroy the many and the strong. And it was something of an unbelievable miracle completely beyond nature, that a few handful of Jewish sages who were not even trained soldiers, they were able to bring down the entire Greek army and make this tremendous military victory for the Jewish people. That happened today. So what do we hear from here? A little lesson we could take home. The Tanya is clearly making a big ask. The name of this book is Sefer Shel Beinoni. It's the book of the intermediary man. It's putting before us a challenge and also a bit of a blessing. You can become such a person. This is a book written for you. You being the intermediary man. And the intermediary man is someone we just said doesn't have any sins. And here we said in the beginning, a person must assess themselves before they take on a spiritual process, spiritual journey. It's quite an often occurrence that a person either overestimates themselves or underestimates themselves. In other words, you at one hand, we tend to think of ourselves as having already reached great states. I could do that. I could be a tzaddik. Every time I teach this to somebody, they say, I feel like I'm the tzaddik. Why not? I'm a perfect person. I could be a perfect person. And then when it comes down to practical reality, sometimes we're afraid of failure. We're afraid of our own successes more often, which means that we underestimate ourselves. We really could do much more. So the idea here is that Tanya on one hand sort of puts us in our place. It explains to us that the bar is very high. That really, are you a person that is even reached the middle intermediary state? Because if you are, you'd be seemingly like Rabbi who has no sins. So probably not. So maybe I'm leaning towards the left a little bit, to the side of the wicked. On the other hand, since the Sefer Shel Beinoni is tasking us to reach the level of a Beinoni, it obviously is telling us that we have some unbelievable powers, that maybe we're not taking ourselves seriously what it is that we're actually charged to do, and that we have the power to do, in which case it's like the story of Hanukkah. You could be the little single voice in your mind, that little inspiration telling you can do it, you can do tshuva, you can do repentance, you can connect yourself no matter where you've been. He has the power to overcome the great, Greek army and take down the masses. That the level of Beinoni is in fact attainable. Maybe it's going to take a miracle, but that also you will have if you set course on the path. See you tomorrow.